With the recent announcement that I did a video on this past week about the executives, the bosses behind the DuckTales reboot, which is currently in its third season, talking about basically being ready, if not ready, to just go full throttle on doing spin offs of other Disney afternoon shows, thus creating a Disney afternoon universe or Afternoonverse, if you will. It made me think, okay, if you are truly committed to doing this, then how are you going to tackle these spin-offs, these other reboots of iconic Disney afternoon shows? I mean, we did find out through various sources. In fact, I found out by watching a video of from a channel called Cartoon Awesome, I believe, and they basically talked about the fact that one of the original choices for a reboot was Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, along with Darkwing Duck and DuckTales, but DuckTales is the one that got the green light. Anyway, though, I wanted to come on here and kind of give you my thoughts on how I think they could approach certain reboots of these iconic Disney afternoon series if they are truly committed of going all the way with it, like they basically letting on to the public that they are. And I mean, obviously obviously you think they would be wanting to be on board with it, seeing as though they're using Ducktales as a platform, to really launch this Disney Afternoonverse into the stratosphere. I mean, the Ducktales basically is the Iron Man of this Disney Afternoon universe, just like Iron Man was the platform, the diving off point for the MCU, or what would be the MCU later on. So anyway, I wanted to come on here and just give you my thoughts on a few series that I think could really benefit from the reboot magic that they used to make DuckTales what it is today, and make it, like I say, that jumping off, diving off platform for Disney Afternoon universe. These are just, in my opinion, various Disney Afternoon series that I think could benefit from the same treatment, especially if you're going to keep it within the same universe and continuity as the DuckTales reboot. So obviously the first one on the list is the one that they really have put a lot of commitment into, and obviously want to see to be the first one to be spun off to tie within or be within the same continuity and universe, and that of course is Darkwing Duck. And I think obviously that they already have the setup point from the Let's Get Dangerous two-part episode of DuckTales. I think they have everything set up there, and you just basically got to come up with an idea of what the series will be about. Like, how is it going to not only be stay within, I should say, the DuckTales continuity and universe, but also, like, what villains and stuff are you going to incorporate to play within this new series? Well, I believe one of the characters that they have already set up, besides Taurus Bulbar from Let's Get Dangerous, I think one of the other characters was, of course, Negaduck, the Jim Sterling character who originally portrayed Darkwing Duck in this version of DuckTales. So they already have Negaduck set up as another potential villain as well. So I think you have all the right ingredients set up for a proper spin-off to tie within the universe, but still be its own thing. Like, it's in the same universe, the same continuity, but it has its own identity. You have all the ingredients there. You have Drake being somewhat of a surrogate father, adoptive father to Goslin, even though they haven't made that official yet. I think with the reboot they will do that. You have Launchpad coming in, mostly at night, maybe sometimes during the day, to spend time with them, help them fight crime. And then, like I said, you have the establishment of already two major villains to play off of. Now, you might ask, well, what about the other characters? Like, what about the Muddlefoot family, the kind of the annoying neighbors of Drake Mallards? Like, you have a Honker, who was Goslin's BFF. How are you going to bring them into the equation? And that is a good question. I think honestly that they will probably, should they go with the series, which obviously, as I mentioned, they're committed to trying to do, I think obviously one of the first couple of or the first several episodes will be Drake adopting, legally Goslin into the family as his daughter. Being committed to being that father figure. I also see in the first couple of episodes not only that happening, but I also see them looking for a home, maybe being set up in a home thanks to Fenton and Scrooge and all them. So I could see within the first episode or two, which could play off as a two-part episode to help establish the series, as its own deal, as well as, again, as I mentioned, staying within the continuity of the DuckTales universe. I could see the first two-parter being, okay, Darkwing's adopting Goslin just like in the original. They're settling into a new home, and in the pilot, and then basically in the pilot, what I'm trying to say is where we get introduced to the Motherfoot family, and we would see this interpretation of Honker. And something tells me, I don't know what it is, but something tells me that this version of Honker and this version of Goslin are going to be paired up as more than just being BFFs. I mean, you take a look at DuckTales, they're pretty much hinting, if not teasing at times, that there might be some kind of situation between Webby and I think is it Dewey or is it Louie and Webby, because they're both very adventurous. So they're kind of playing that up already, that there might be some kind of mutual attraction beyond, just being best friends, living in the same house and all that. So they've already teased that up a little bit, from what I understand. So to me, it's obvious that, again, if you're going to introduce a new interpretation of a character into this series, then either they got to stay true to who that character is, or at least carry the spirit of the original interpretation, but also bring on something new. And in my opinion, I think what's going to be brought in that's new is you're going to get the close friendship between the two developed, that being Goslin and Honker. But I think they're also going to probably start planting the seeds potentially for that friendship to blossom into something more. Again, I could be wrong, but if they do a two-part pilot again for the series itself, on its own to be its own thing, but within the same continuity, I could see that being like the setup point. Like they're going to be BFFs, or they'll start growing as BFFs, but then all of a sudden we'll start getting, hints here and there of something potentially more than just friendship between the two. Of course, you have to have other characters show up eventually, different interpretations of them. I definitely think Morgana, if they bring in Morgana in this interpretation of Darkwing Duck, that she's got to be like a Catwoman-like character. She can't just be a sorceress either, because if you're gonna, cement this version of DuckTales, or this version of Disney Afternoon, somewhat into reality with a bit of the fantasy and sci-fi and all that thrown in there. But if you're gonna cement it as basically being like the Prime universe and being more real and legit, then I think if you're gonna bring Morgana in within the new Darkwing Duck series, that she's got to be basically a Morgana that's like a Catwoman-like character, but is also a very talented musician. In other words, she knows about sorcery and everything, but she's not, the way she is. She's kind of similar to what she would be in the original, or what she was in the original, but you have a different take on her to where she's studying magic, and she's using magic to kind of be, that cat burglar that eventually, just like she does in the original, meets up with Drake, falls for Drake, gets to know him better, gets to know maybe him and Darkwing are one and the same, and just go from there. So in my opinion, that's how I think I could view them bringing in a character like Morgana. The other characters that we see, like in Justice Ducks, I could see them bringing in different interpretations of them down the line in the Darkwing Duck reboot, if they're going to do it, and it looks like they will. So I see different interpretations of them eventually. But this is just, right now, just my theory of how I see them probably playing up, the introduction of certain characters that we know are iconic when it comes to Darkwing Duck, and how I could potentially see things, in my opinion, happening with these interpretations of the characters, like the Muddlefoot family, and Honker, if you will, and Honker and Gosling's relationship. I can see that being played up in a big way to where it would slowly grow into something more than friendship. I could see maybe even Binky Muddlefoot, because they've had at times in the original series, they've had episodes of her kind of getting in on the action, if not accidentally or whatever. So I could see her probably being a little bit more involved with the story. Maybe she'll have a more important role. Herb, I think that's her husband's name, I think will still be true to what he is, but he might be more serious or more comedic, who knows. But I can definitely see some changes for at least Binky as well. And then the big brother, I think his name is Tank. I can see him staying somewhat the same, and maybe if they want to keep us, really unexpectedness when it comes to these kind of shows, I could see him being someone that would run off and want to join a crime organization, or like Fowl and all that. I could see him being lured away, and I could see him playing up that within the series as a potential story arc, or minor story arc, if you will. So anyway, though, that's just some of the ideas I think I could see them doing with Darkwing Duck and its reboot, if they're committed to, again, like I said, going in this direction. Now it's time, I should say, to let you know what other series I think could really build off and have the potential to be more than what they were originally, if they are committed to doing this with all the other Disney Afternoon series that they've referenced and cameoed within the series. And again, Darkwing Duck is the first one to start off with, but now let me tell you about another one. Alright, so the next choice I think is also an obvious one, since they were referenced in Season 2, and that is, of course, the Gummy Bears. I think if you're going to play up the fact that the Gummy Bears, at least from a prior standpoint, thousands of years prior, existed within the same continuity, in the same universe as the DuckTales reboot, just as I mentioned with Darkwing Duck previously, then you have to give them a series as well. You have to do a reboot series centered around them as well. And the way it should be structured is you have to stay kind of true to what the original was. Now here's the thing. I understand that basically you can't have Calvin or Calla in there of any kind, because they're humans. I mean, you could have them in there, but you can have maybe anthropomorphic versions of them, who find out about these mystical creatures, the gummies. So you could probably play with that if you want to. But honestly, just by going off that little moment, that little reference and clip in the original series, in the second season episode, I think you have to play with that even more so. You really have to start playing with that. And you have to basically develop stories that not only are similar to some of the classic Gummy Bear episodes and adventures we have with the original series, but are also different, but are also unique and somewhat different. You got to play up with the fact that maybe there was a version of Fowl back then in the Gummy Bear days of Dunwin and all that. So, playing up with that kind of an idea, to where you can kind of loosely adapt or loosely remake different versions of iconic episodes from Gummy Bears for a modern day reboot that would be within the DuckTales universe of today, the Disney Afternoonverse of today. Then I think basically, the potential is there to go all the way with it. And one thing that Scrooge says in the one clip you can find on YouTube is the fact that they had mystical powers, or they had mysterious powers. So you could play up that fact. You could play up the fact that it wasn't just, the juice, the gummy berry juice, that gave them their bouncing abilities. But you could also play up the fact that they have different abilities themselves. They have different unique powers that maybe throughout this interpretation of Gummy Bears, you could have them discover individually. Go down that route to where you could have the version of Sunny and, discover an ability on her own that she didn't know she had, but she had heard potentially was hidden and locked within inside her, and that when a certain moment comes around that she, that she needs to take action in, that's when the power could be unlocked. The same with Cubby, the same with Tummy, Gruffy, Grammy, Zummy himself, and even Gusto if you want to bring in Gusto. And heck, you can even do a different interpretation of the Barbics and how they are towards not just humans, but outsiders, basically those that are not of the bear kind. So you can still play with those ideas, but play with them in a unique way that's familiar but different, and definitely can reside within, from a prequel perspective, within the same universe and continuity as DuckTales, as the DuckTales series of now, the Disney Afternoonverse of now. You could definitely find unique ways to do that. So I definitely think Gummy Bears should be one of the other series they consider to reboot, retcon, and try to get to be within the same universe and continuity, but from a prequel perspective, but like I said, from a prequel perspective of, from what DuckTales is right now. That's what I'm trying to say. But basically, yeah. I know that's a mouthful to say right there because, of course, as usual, I'm going without a script. I'm just going off the top of my mind here. But basically, like I said, to me, playing with the idea to, like I said, create familiar stories or recreate familiar stories that we saw originally in the original series, but make them interpretate them enough to where they fit within the context of the same universe that DuckTales would later on reside in. This version of DuckTales, I think, would work. I think you have the potential is there. I think, you have enough material to go with. And again, you could do different versions or different prelude versions of what we see in DuckTales, like different, organizations of world domination or larceny, like with Fowl. You can get your first version of Fowl shown in Gummy Bears, like how they probably came together originally, and stuff like that. So to me, as I said, the potential is there. They have enough material to work with. And if you're gonna reference them as being like way before the way before the days of Scrooge McDuck, then you definitely have to give us something than just a reference, because obviously people want to know more about, okay, what is this version of Gummy Bears like? Are they similar, identical to the originals? Are they different? They're gonna want to know this stuff. And again, like I said, if you're gonna play with the fact that, as Scrooge told Beakley in that flashback in season 2, that they had mystical powers besides the bouncing, maybe, then you got to play with that. And like I said, you could have it to where every time a situation or someone's in a dire situation or something needs to be taken care of that will benefit the safety of others or the future of others, that's when the power for maybe an individual character in the Gummy Glen clan could be unlocked. And again, you could work with different ways of how you would interpret the Barbics, and how they would view outsiders and everything. So again, they just have a whole unlimited source in front of them to give us a proper Gummy Bears reboot that could reside, if not would reside perfectly within the universe and continuity of DuckTales, but from a prequel perspective. In other words, taking place centuries before the days of Scrooge and the McDuck family. But that's just the Gummy Bears. Who else do I think could benefit from them going in that reboot route, should they commit to it? Okay, so the next one should be an obvious one, since they kind of played a little bit of a minor role. They were hyped up, and rumor is they are coming back eventually for the finale. Of course, I gotta talk about Rescue Rangers. And now you might say, well, how would they work this? I mean, aren't they kind of off limits? Well, they're kind of off limits, but not really. I mean, basically, long story short, if you read the story of the behind-the-scenes story of how they got them in there, at first, the people were kind of reluctant, but then when they heard potentially what could be, they were like, go ahead, take them, put them in there. Anyway, To me, Rescue Rangers is an obvious choice since originally they were one of the three Disney afternoon shows that was being considered for a reboot within this kind of a continuity and context. So to me, Rescue Rangers, again, you could build off what we saw in their episode, the Double O Duck episode. You can build off that of how they were originally lab rats, but thanks to, what's her name, Herring or something like that. I'm just going to call Black Herring, I think. Thanks to her and her intelligent way, they became who they are. So, from a continuity standpoint, staying within the same universe as DuckTales, you could play off that. You could bring Black Herring into the Rescue Ranger series herself and have her be like one of the main antagonists, if not the main rival to the Rangers, and if not the Rangers themselves, if not specifically Gadget. Because you could have Black Herring, maybe find a way to communicate with them, or they find a way to communicate with her, and she could be like, look, I could use I can get back that, I can reinvent that intelligent way anytime, and I could use it to basically reduce you back to regular rodents. That to me, from a continuity standpoint, would work. Because it would be a great story arc, because you wouldn't know whether or not, she would succeed, and it would take maybe Gadget, being like the main rival for her, finding a way to reverse the effects. So I think, honestly, you bring in Black Herring, I think that's her name, into Rescue Rangers, into the reboot, and make her one of the main antagonists and rivals for the Rangers, more specifically for Gadget, and you have a story that tells itself. And throughout the series, you could have the Rangers, not only with their intelligence raised a lot more, or little by little, but you could keep the Rangers true to who they were in the original series, with a few differences here and there. You could keep, Chip as, himself, the leader, the lover of detective stories and stuff like that. You could have Dale be like the heart of the team, the comedic relief at times, the laid-back individual that at times that when basically things need to be taken seriously, he will do that. You could keep Monterey as the guy that likes to be adventurous, and maybe he wants to eventually go off on his own and go on worldwide adventures along with Zipper. So you could keep some of those traits if you want to, but kind of showcase them differently. You could do that. And like I said, if you bring in Black Herring as the main antagonist and rival to them, specifically Gadget, it works even better. It works even better. Now, as far as the other characters known known for being part of Rescue Rangers, like Fat Cat being an antagonist and all that, you could definitely bring him in. You could have Black Herring thinking, you know what, I'm going to need help here. Who do I get to help me out? And you could have her find a cat and say, you know what, I'm going to do to this cat what I did to these mice with this intelligent ray. Boom! Hit the cat, the alley cat with the intelligent ray, and thus you have Fat Cat. And then you have basically maybe someone that, Black Herring thinks she can trust, who, could come under the tutelage of Fowl so that he knows his place, but also someone that could create his own gang, so he could use the intelligent ray on all the other gang members that we know of, that are associated with him in the original series. Anyway, you could do that. You could bring him into the series like that. You might ask, well, what about Nimno? How would you bring him in? I think just like what I mentioned with Gummy Bears, if you're going to bring in a human version, a different interpretation of a human character, but it's got to be anthropomorphic. I think the same thing with Nimno. You got to bring him in as an anthropomorphic character. I don't know what kind of anthropomorphic character it would be, but you got to bring him in, and maybe to make it, set in reality even more so, definitely play up the fact that he is a lot more crazier than the original version. Like, he's a lot more of a mad scientist, to the point that even Black Herring doesn't want anything to do with him because he's crazier than her. So I could see them finding ways to bring in the characters that we know of that are iconic with the show as villains and maybe even allies, but do it in a way that's, familiar and different. For example, I'm sure one character a lot of people would love to see come into this series is Foxglove Bat. I recently did a video on the 30 years of her being in the Ranger fandom, being part of the Ranger franchise. So I know fans would be overjoyed if she came in somehow, but how would she be brought in? Would she be brought in as she originally was? Would we have a little bit of a difference in personality? Would she be just as fun-loving and adorable as originally? Or would she have a bit of that um, adventurous streak to her, or something? Would she have some kind of difference in personality, similar to maybe what Gandra D had to Fenton in DuckTales? I don't think they would do that, but you never know. But it would be really interesting. I think if they were to bring Foxglove in, I think what we would get is a character that's similar to what she was, personality-wise in the original series, but I could see a little bit of a difference, a little tweak here and there to make her just a little bit different, a little unique for this interpretation of Rescue Rangers that would reside in the same continuity and universe as this new DuckTales series. So I can see that. I can see them bringing in Tammy, but I see Tammy being like her own thing. And I can actually see them reversing the roles. At the moment, Chip probably rescues Tammy, and she thanks him. That he turns around, and instead of her being twiddle-pated with him, all of a sudden he becomes twiddle-pated with her. So that could work. There's different ways they could do it. And if they chose to bring in these characters, but I think with Foxglove we still get a little bit of the personality associated with the original Tammy, but something tweaked in there enough to make her kind of a different interpretation for this version of Rescue Rangers. In other words, someone, like I said, that has the original personality or trace of it, but has a little bit of mixture of new put in there to make her kind of the more modern day version of who she is. So definitely potential is there. And again, you have the one thing about Rescue Rangers is they didn't just solve crimes within their home city. They went around the world. And just like with DuckTales and Scrooge, and how everybody got behind both these new series and the original series because of those kind of storytelling adventures, you could do the same thing with Rescue Rangers. You can have them going around the world and helping out when needed, stopping foul when needed, encountering Black Heron when needed, Fat Cat and all that, even some new villains and allies. I think it'd be really a really cool deal to see that happen. I think it would be. And again, like I said, you could play with the story that Black Heron would want to create an intelligent way, a new intelligent way to finally reduce the Rangers back to regular lab rodents once again. You could play with that idea. And that would make an interesting story arc because you don't know if there would be consequences, as I said earlier, and if it would be Gadget, who became, in my opinion, the focal point of the guest appearance in DuckTales. You don't know if it would be up to her to save her friends. So, I think again, they have, just like I said with the other two, they have the ingredients they need. They have the momentum. They have the ingredients. They have all the characters and stuff they need to make a reboot, a modern day reboot that would be within the same continuity and universe as DuckTales, at their fingertips. And they just need to capitalize on it. Take the momentum they have now, capitalize on it, and go from there. And give us, in my opinion, what could be another huge, massive hit that would be renewed for seasons to come, just like DuckTales was, or is. So yeah, that's Rescue Rangers and how I think they could be interpreted and utilized into the DuckTales universe, Disney Afternoonverse continuity of today. But we also have a few more. Okay, so the next one should be another obvious one, and that is Tailspin. I don't know what episode the grown-up version of Kit and Molly are going to appear in, but I definitely think doing a continuing series within the same universe and continuity as DuckTales would definitely work. I mean, you already have an established villain in Don Carnage from Tailspin already make his presence known in DuckTales. So having him in the new version of Tailspin, I think, is a no-brainer. You have some other iconic characters and villains you could bring in, like Shere Khan, if you can get him. I don't know if there's any kind of licensing situation. But again, you have, again, like I mentioned with the other series, you have all the, well, at least what they could get. They have all the elements needed to give us a decently good Tailspin series, a reboot series that would be contained within, or could be contained within, the new Disney Afternoonverse that DuckTales is currently, like I said, the foundation of right now. Again, and like I said, well, not like I said, but basically, you also have, uh, as I mentioned, the adult version of Kit and Molly. You could play off the fact that maybe Kit and Molly now run Higher for Hire, or they're their own freelance individuals. You could play off the fact that perhaps they got together. I mean, for all we know, and this has happened before. You can't put anything past Disney nowadays, especially in this day and age that we're in, with so many, different viewpoints and all that. You cannot put past the fact that Disney would not come out and have it revealed, maybe in DuckTales when it happened, when they debut, or have it revealed that Kit and Molly got together. Even though in the original series, Molly is like what? 7 years younger than Kit? They could completely ignore that and say Molly's always been just a year younger or the same age as Kit, for all we know. So they could play with that. They could do that nowadays because nothing's really off. Nothing's restricted in my opinion, except maybe, Baloo and the rest of the Jungle Book characters that were part of Tailspin. But again, well, we'll have to wait and see how they explain that when Kit and Molly debut. Obviously, Rebecca could show up in DuckTales as well, at least be mentioned or seen briefly. Who knows? And maybe we could find out, from that perspective. But you can also bring her into the series as well of a Tailspin reboot. Maybe have her still in charge of Hire for Hire, but getting ready to step down and hand the business over to Kit and Molly, and maybe that could be a potential story arc of, she's getting ready to step down, and she wants to hand it over to Kit and Molly, knowing that it would be in good hands, but but her main goal would probably be to finally outdo Shere Khan, or at least outdo Khan Enterprises, and prove that sometimes being a faithful, honest business, if you will, is better than being a corrupt business. Kind of play into, I guess, today's world a little bit, at least for kids to understand. So I could see them doing something like that with Becky, if you were Rebecca Cunningham, if she was to be interpreted into the Tailspin reboot. And again, I could also see them playing up the whole Kit and Molly are more than just friends now. They're, romantically linked. I can see them maybe playing on that a little bit to where, yes, it would be a little like, Disney, do you really have to do this? But again, if you really want to set it in reality, in which they're trying to interpret this version of DuckTales being in, then you definitely got to go there at times. I mean, knowing that basically at the end of several episodes, or at the end of an episode which would focus on that, or semi-focus on that, that they would get back together some way, somehow. But again, like I said, from what I understand, from what I could see, unless there's some licensing issues, they have all the elements at their fingertips to really make a Tailspin reboot work. I don't know about Wildcat. I guess you can bring him in. Maybe you can bring in that girl that kind of fell for him at the end of that one episode where he looked like he was an exact copy of Shere Khan. Can't think of her name right now. But I could see I could see her being brought in, and maybe that's how you find out about where Wildcat is, and maybe what he's up to. You could play with that. Again, they have so many elements with or without licensing restrictions of characters at their fingertips to utilize to make a decently good Tailspin reboot series that could exist in the same universe as DuckTales. And that's it for Tailspin, but I got two more. Okay, so obviously, I think the next one should be obvious, if you will, play on words there, and that is, of course, Bonkers. And I know Bonkers just made a cameo appearance in those videos of him being attacked by the fictional Darkwing Duck villains of Bushroot, Megavolt, Liquidator, and Quackerjack. But obviously, if you're going to bring him in, whether you like the character or not, you have to consider doing at least some kind of spin-off with him. You got to do something that's going to basically follow his adventures in Saint Canard, or maybe he moves on to another city because maybe he's not living up to his expectations as a Saint Canard police officer. So you could probably spin his series off, make his series to where he moves on to another city, and in this city, he actually becomes the cop he needs to be. So I think honestly, it would actually work in my opinion. I think honestly it could work if they did that, and of course this way you could also introduce the characters that are associated with him. You could introduce Jitters. You can introduce Grumbles. You can introduce Fall Apart. Heck, you can introduce his love interest, Fondier. And you know what would be interesting? You can make them more. You can make them more basically involved in the story, and in the cases and all that, than in the original series. You can make them more involved. You can get them more established, if you will. Heck, you can make some of them maybe for one episode or two. Maybe take a page out of one of the chapters of the Bonkers 1999 fanfic. Make them for at least maybe one episode or two. Make them officers themselves. Who knows? Maybe Fawn is going to be an officer, and that's how Bonkers meets her when he transfers to another precinct, if you will, in another city to get better, or to at least try to build himself back up, redeem himself. Now, of course, you got to have some of the iconic villain characters. To me, you got to bring in Al Vermin. I don't know how they would do that, but you got to bring him in somehow. You got to bring in what's his name? Wacky Weasel, I think. You definitely got to bring in the Collector. Now you might say, well, if they bring in the Collector, Brian, how are they going to explain the way he is? Well, it's simple. You could say, because if you want to try to put a little bit of darkness in there, and that's what they kind of do sometimes with the DuckTales series. If you want to kind of make it a little dark at times, or like out of nowhere deal, just say he got mutated. Say something happened to him to where he basically got hit with some kind of chemical, and it caused some things to fuse to him, some stuff to fuse to him, and all that, some certain parts. So you could do that. You can play with that idea, and I think it would actually be. I think actually it would get people to tune in and to see exactly to see that version of him and to find out how it happened, to see that origin, I believe. So to me, you could do that. You can, and also and here's the thing about Bonkers, especially when it comes to this interpretation of him, you could definitely build newer characters, antagonists, as well. I mean, heck, you can incorporate Fowl into this one as well, into this version as well. You could have Flaps and Vermin be part of Fowl. You can have Catcher Lake or Onowitz, if you want to bring her in, be a member of Fowl. And you wouldn't know it until this series came around. So to me, again, maybe they don't have as many elements as they would with the other series, but they, to me, would have enough, if you will, for a Bonkers reboot to occur and to happen. And in my opinion, it would allow the characters associated with Bonkers, like Fawn, Jitters, Grumbles, Fall Apart, you name it, to finally have more screen time and maybe more involvement in the stories as well. And like I said, maybe you could take Fawn and make her a police officer that Bonkers meets and becomes friends with, and slowly becomes more smitten with, and vice versa. over the course of the series. It could work in my opinion. But yeah, I think, if you're going to cameo Bonkers and basically set the fact that he does exist in this realm, you got to give him his own series. And I think having the series spin off to where he's transferred to another precinct to kind of redeem himself, and make himself better as a police officer, I think would be the best way to go. And again, that's how you can incorporate his friends into the equation as well. But we also have one more Disney Afternoon series that could work. So the last Disney Afternoon series is obvious because he made a special guest appearance. They played on it in the second to third episode of this season. And we're talking Goof Troop. Because if you're going to bring Goofy in and basically establish he's in this continuity, in this universe, special guest star or not, you're going to bring him in and establish that, as well as establish the fact that Max and Roxanne from Goof Troop the movie, exist in this world as well. Then I don't think I can say any more than what I have to. You have all the elements. Nothing really, in my opinion, is off limits. You bring in Pete along with, Peg and Pistol and PJ, and you're good to go. Now you might say, well, how would it play within the continuity? Well, it's real simple. You could keep it true to the identity of the original, maybe change up some things, personality-wise with the characters. Basically what it's like, basically, as I mentioned earlier, you have bits and pieces of the original personality in there, but mixed in with something new. As well as, the fact that you can make it more, not just slice of life-like, but since you have them knowing that, hey, foul exists, and that there are, people that want to do wrong out there, you can have them go on adventures. You can have them, unexpectedly, in my opinion, be involved in certain situations. So, in my opinion, again, everything right there is set and ready for them to go when it comes to a Goof Troop reboot. And again, they could do a lot with it. You could have, Max and PJ be basically the 15, 16-year-old versions that they are. You could have Pistol be that 13-year-old little sister. You can have Roxanne get involved and have interaction with her and Peg. The possibilities are just endless with a Goof Troop interpretation, a reboot being within the same universe as the DuckTales reboot. It could work. Again, you could have them do more than just have slice of life episodes. You could have them go on worldwide adventures if you have to, or at least get involved in some kind of espionage or something to where they discover, oh, this person wants to destroy our town, this person wants to embezzle this person works for that organization, and then have them find a way to kind of stop that person from accomplishing the goal, for themselves or for whoever they work for. And again, the potential is there. The potential is there. If you're going to establish the fact, that Stand Out and Eye to Eye, two power line songs from Goof Troop the movie, are canon in DuckTales, by having Della and I think, Louie singing them, then I don't know what else to say. So, in my opinion, you have more than just enough ingredients to do a Goof Troop reboot set within the same continuity and universe as DuckTales. And that's basically the list of shows that I truly believe should be considered, and probably are being considered, if not being put into a pre-production, if not pre-production, over at Disney right now for a continuation of the Disney Afternoon universe and continuity that the new DuckTales series has set the foundation for to be built upon with their series. Like I said, all the potential is there, from the obvious Darkwing Duck to Gummy Bears to Rescue Rangers to Bonkers, Tailspin, Goof Troop. Everything that they need is on the table for them in some shape, form, or fashion. I mentioned this as well about a couple of days ago when I talked about, when I reported that the Disney execs behind DuckTales want to spin off and expand the Disney Afternoonverse, if you will, with other shows. based on Disney Afternoon properties. You know, I mentioned this. A lot of people mentioned this as well when they talked about the Let's Get Dangerous deal. You have Solago or Solago, depending on how you pronounce it, being referenced. You know, what better possibility to do an adaptation or a loose adaptation of the Legend of the Chaos God, either for the finale of DuckTales this year or for future Disney Afternoon spin-offs, than with said spin-offs that I just mentioned. I mean, think about it. If you want to get a early interpretation or kind of loosely adapt, like say the first early interaction of Solago's power or his circuit or whatever, you could go the Tailspin route, or because Tailspin is set within the same timeline as DuckTales, you can have Gummy Bears take their place and have have the Chaos God magic or Solago circuit, whatever, discussed and talked about as far back as that. And then what you could do is you could build upon that, and you can go with the next part being focused on Rescue Rangers, and then the next one focused maybe on Tailspin, and then maybe Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, you name it. You can find a way to get them into. Bonkers could be put in there for all we know. Goof Troop, maybe if you want to add them to the equation, although people do kind of question, like, why was Goof Troop involved, if you will, in the original story? You can have all those things occur. You can. But here's how I think a Legend of the Chaos God adaptation or loose adaptation should go, in my opinion. Should, as I mentioned in this video throughout, they go through with the commitment of expanding the Disney Afternoonverse with various spin-offs. I think if they do the Gummy Bears spin-off, that should be the first part of the Legend of the Chaos God on full adaptation. That should be the first part in this multi-part story. Gummy Bears should be the first part. I think the second part should be Tailspin, just like in the original. Stay true to that. And then the third part should be Rescue Rangers. The fourth part should be Bonkers, not Goof Troop. The fifth part should be DuckTales. And then to cap it off, to stay true to the original, even though it would be loose, somewhat identical but loose, you conclude it with Darkwing Duck. So that's how I think they should interpret it, loosely, obviously loosely, if not full on. They should go Gummy Bears, Tailspin, Rescue Rangers, Bonkers, DuckTales, and then Darkwing Duck. That's how they should do it. Bonkers taking the place of Goof Troop, in my opinion, makes more sense than having Goof Troop involved as well. Although you could work it to where they could be involved, I think Bonkers would be a better choice, in my opinion. But yeah, that's how I think they could interpret the Legend of the Chaos God story for a modern audience. Like I said, with Gummy Bears being the first part, Tailspin being the second, Rescue Rangers the third, Bonkers the fourth, DuckTales the fifth, and concluding with Darkwing Duck as the sixth. But again, like I said, if the Disney execs behind DuckTales are serious about doing a reboot, doing various reboots and spin-offs of classic Disney Afternoon shows that would be within the same universe and continuity as the DuckTales series of now, then to me that's probably one of the best directions they could go in, adaptation story arcs, if you will, that they can go in to really unify, really showcase that, hey, these are not just their own individual these are not just their own series with their own identities, they're also within the same universe. They also exist in the same continuity. I mean, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, Iron Man is looked at as the foundation piece for the whole MCU. The first Iron Man movie set the foundation for the entire MCU to be built upon. No one thought that was going to happen back in 2007, but it did. It did. Oh, in 2007, 2008, but it did. And from then on in, every movie that's come out after that has been connected to each other. They've had some kind of connection of being within the same continuity and universe. There's been no individualness. It's all been connected one by one. And the same obviously is going to be said for this version of the Disney Afternoon, should those Disney execs behind the series of DuckTales be committed truly to making this happen. And like I said, if they want to loosely adapt the Chaos God storyline for the Disney Adventure magazines, guess what? That would probably be one of the biggest examples of showing the fact that, hey, just like the MCU movies had their own identities, but they were interconnected, throughout in the same universe and continuity, the same could be said with a loose adaptation of the Legend of the Chaos God by showcasing that the same could be said with these Disney Afternoon reboots and spin-offs. But anyway, though, guys, that's all I'm going to say on the potential series that I think should be looked into, and if not are being looked into, if not already being put down on paper or pencil in a pre-production way for a potential spin-off in the future. But which ones do you think honestly will happen and potentially could happen? Let me know down below. Comment if you like, and I'm out.